Okay, this is the Frontiers Science Seminar Series, which we have organized for the whole of this year. And this is the first edition. Of course, we sent the notice not too long, and we got very impressive registration from all over the continent. That is quite encouraging, which shows the interest people have in this. Although, as it is, many places people have these technical issues, but we'll see how we'll manage through this. We have made the theme for this series as disrupting stagnation, empowering Africa's future. We know that our continent is bleeding from many perspectives, and our goal collectively is to try to change the narrative. And that can come from personal efforts, institutional efforts, and so on and so forth. So this seminar series is one of such efforts to contribute to discussion and the conversation around moving our continent forward. So welcome to this. This will be 3 weekly seminar, and I am the convener of this seminar, and Eman, who is here with us, is the co-convener from Egypt. So perhaps I'll give her few minutes to introduce herself. Eman.
Good evening, everyone. You are welcome to our Frontiers Science Seminars. We intend to be a continuous series during all the year. For me, it is very motivating and something I think it will be motivating for everyone and capacity building to build our career. The first time I know Brian was during one of the courses he organized, which was the systematic review and meta-analysis course, and it was an opportunity for me to communicate and collaborate with several of my colleagues from all over Africa. And I also have the opportunity to attend the second course, which is reproducibility in scientific research. I hope this will be a great opportunity for every one of you to join us. And the Frontiers seminar series will be an opportunity for collaboration, discussing, and doing something to advance Africa and to improve scientific research in Africa and capacity building for everyone. You are all welcome.
Thank you very much, Eman, for your introduction. Okay, let me go. This is what I intend for us to look at this evening. The welcome is going on. Please introduce yourself on the chat function of the Zoom and give your emails so that we can have them for future communication. So I intend to introduce the Frontiers, as we call it, Frontiers Initiatives. And then I will get into my presentation of the day, or have a short break. And of course, after the introduction, before my presentation, I want us to take a break as well so that we can stretch our legs. And then we can have some time for discussions, get inputs, because we also need to continue to formulate agenda for discussions in the future. And I intend to have a breakout session. I have planned plan something we can do and think about, and then we can close. So let's see if our time can allow us to do all this. The Frontiers initiatives. Last year, the background is this: last year, July, I started having free courses, and this was really motivated by the situation we found ourselves with the COVID. And of course, I've been thinking about all this for some time, how possible I can contribute my quota to our dear continent. So last July, that materialized when I started a course. So I had a course I taught last July, and that is related to evidence synthesis in scientific research. And in that course, we had several people coming, and I started thinking about taking this forward. And so came this idea of the Frontier Initiatives, and this is a platform that will be used for capacity building, training in career development, offering courses, scientific research, around leadership, scientific leadership, discussions around scientific communication, mentoring as well, and organizing seminars like this. This is primarily to continue the discussion on how we as scientists of African origin can, from wherever we are around the world, engage in this discussion to contribute our quota. The fact is that many times we have gone through our history, the politicians have played a major role in this process. And the scientists, as we will see today, have more or less taken the back seat, and perhaps attitude is that it's not, it doesn't concern us so much. But I think we need to change narrative in moving towards the direction where we realize that we are actually the custodians of African development. So this initiative aims to develop the capacity of African scientists in order to allow them to perform well in their research. So that is my goal. And so when I set out, I developed a three-year plan of training activities I will have. So starting with the course in July last year, and when I sent out the advert, I got 110 applications and 42 attended the course. The second one was just ended last Friday. These trainings will continue. They are free of charge. If you are interested in them, please get in touch. The advert for grant writing will go out perhaps a month or in March. So please look out for that. And then in October, we want to also do around scientific writing and publishing. And then came this seminar series, which we have integrated into this conversation, in addition to the training we have. As you can see, not everyone who wants to participate in these courses get opportunity. So we thought that having this would be a good addition to what we're already doing with training. In all, it is about discussing Africa scientific strides. And so these courses are all, after the course, are all on the YouTube channel. If you want access to that, please also get in touch. Show you how you get there, and they are all free of charge. So the seminar series we'll be discussing is the feedback of some of the participants during the course in July, which was quite positive feedback from across board. Some saw it as an opportunity to improve, as an opportunity to learn new skills that usually they were not able to learn. Of course, many of these skills are beyond the four walls of the classroom when you undergo your training. So it was positive feedback we got from that course. And the second one that ended on Friday as well was quite a big experience for me too, and for the participants that took part in the course. New things they were able to learn through this training, and their feedback was also profoundly positive. And so what we try to do in this trainings is that you don't just learn new skills, new research skills, or new scientific skills, or gain new knowledge. This gives opportunity to make new connections, and this is very evident. And also based on how I structure the trainings, that people after the trainings get to connect and continue. Some have already formed ideas of research to collaborate on. Some have made connections in different ways to improve themselves. So it gives you that opportunity beyond gaining the knowledge. For instance, the training we had throughout last week, it was Monday to Friday full time. At least we're there 7 hours each day. At the end, the groups that we have formed during the course ended up having something to continue. Some are writing papers to publish based on the project they had from the course. So it gives you that opportunity really to continue to collaborate with brothers and sisters across different parts of the continent. The course that ended on Friday had participants from 20 African countries, which is very encouraging. From the first course we had, I have a cohort of about 10 of them I mentor. So if you want career mentoring, if you want to perform your task well as a scientist, there's that opportunity for mentoring. And the issue of book smart and street smart in science, the fact is that many things the scientists we use to perform the task usually are not taught when they do their studies. So on the job, they need to learn, they need to improve their skills. And these skills come from experiences, sharing experiences, meeting with people who have gained these experiences. So we try in these trainings allow participants to have access to what we call these street smart skills, those skills that you need and come from long-term practice, failure, and success, try and error. And so it's very important to gain such skills. And then, as I mentioned earlier, all of these materials are recorded and they are on the YouTube channel. And then from the beginning of this year, I have what I call the Dr. Nwaru's Weekly Nuggets. It's a science nugget. Each week I present a snippet of an aspect of the scientific research process or career issues that can be motivating for my fellow Africans, and also in the YouTube channel. So look out for this. watch the videos. I think they are quite helpful. So I mentioned the next training is in April, and that will be on research funding and writing, which is a big topic for many people. And I think the reason for that is quite obvious. Yeah, so the reason why we're here today concerns the seminar series, and Eman and I have discussed to take this forward, to open a forum where Africans from all walks of life will come together to engage in discussion, and discussion that is in line with our motivation to increase the capacity of African scientists, to help them grow in their career, and so that we can continue this discussion. Fortunately, many of the people who attend these trainings we have contact with are young African scientists. That is quite motivating, who want to do well. And many times, the tools are not always in their immediate environment. And so we think that opening a platform that will allow these discussions will be very helpful. And that is why we set up this for the whole of this year. And we have for each quarter choosing a theme that we can focus on. And for the first quarter, we are looking at on being a real African scientist. And we have chosen different topics within each quarter, and so on and so forth. So that is what we'll be doing the whole of this year. But it doesn't end there. We also want to take this forward to next year. While in this year, we focus on capacity building and career development discussions, next year, we want to spotlight some of the breakthrough research that are being conducted by Africans. We want to spotlight them. We want to spotlight them to fellow scientists. And we want to use that opportunity to open rooms for collaboration, which is needed, open rooms to engage ourselves, open rooms to see where we can also contribute to what other people are doing, and see how we can take all these things happening forward for the development of our continent. So what we have planned is that each quarter we'll have, as we have this year, 3 weekly discussions. We have presentation on selected top research going on in different fields, and we'll have them present and we'll discuss all this. And this we'll do throughout the year. So this continues for next year, but we'll focus on other aspects than this year. And to accomplish all this, we have reached out to distinguished African sons and daughters to ask them to come into this platform to help to engage in these discussions. So we have reached out to people from different professional expertise. And as you can see, the topics we have are not purely academic related issues, but because we see science as part of society itself, we see scientists as part of society themselves, even though many times they have been either they have been segregated or they have segregated themselves out. But scientists are part of society, and there is need to ensure that they have the tools they need from different part of the society as well. And so we have issues covering leadership, we have issues covering sustainability, we have issues covering women in science, and we have issues covering the role of the media, the role of the government, the role of charities, so on and so forth. So these are confirmed speakers, and they will be presenting from their own expertise, as you can see from here. So I think this will be very interesting to hear from them, the perspective they will be sharing with us. And the plan we have from this is that this is being recorded, and once each session is finished, it will be uploaded on the YouTube channel. So if you want to go through it again, if you want to refer to your friends, if you want to engage in discussions, to put your comments there, please feel free. But this will be recorded and put on the YouTube channel. That is the first thing we want to accomplish. The second thing is that we plan not just to leave it at presentation in this forum. We want to take it forward by asking each presenter to compile their presentation to a chapter, which we will compile into a book. And hopefully this can reach everyone to take note of this discussion that have come from here. So this is our plan. Then particularly for the sake of the young Africans who are joining this discussion, we have made what we call special extras. So at the end of each, the last presentation on each quarter, instead of 2 hours, we'll have it 3 hours. And during the 3 hours, we want to have 1 hour after the main presentation, in which we have invited some of Africans who are excelling in their different areas, young Africans, home and abroad, to share their career story, what has been their key decision milestones they have made. And I think this will be encouraging for the young Africans who are coming. So prepare the last presentation of each quarter. Prepare yourself to come and share in these experiences. Overall, please, it is good that you don't plan to miss any session, because rich with African sons and daughters, and I think we will benefit from this discussion as well. So some people have indicated they didn't get the Zoom and the login details, but once you registered to the session, usually the confirmation emails you have the Zoom ID and the password to get into the meeting. So check your email carefully. It is written on the registration page that once you send your registration, you get that. Some said they didn't get that, so I'm not sure why that happened. Of course, I tried it myself, and I got it when I registered. But so please check that. And the plan we have is that each session we have a separate registration. Once you come into the program here, everyone is muted, and unmute yourself when you are asked to unmute, so that we can allow one person to speak at a time, and also for the sake that we are recording this, to avoid too much background noise. So we have promised 2 hours, we want to respect it. And so please, from our own part, we'll do that, and from your own part, we want you to do that. The conversation we want to engage in, we need to keep this going, because punctuality is also part of the qualities that are needed, timekeeping, are needed to change Africa. So we start 6 p.m. West Central African time, and we end 8 p.m. each of the meeting evenings. So let's keep to that. If you want to ask questions, please write on the chat box we'll have what we call frontiers ambassadors who are collecting those questions, and we'll come back to you to give you opportunity to speak. And then each session we want to evaluate it, how it went, so that we can take the feedback into the next session, what we need to improve, what we need to change, and so on and so forth. So please, after the meetings, we'll send you evaluation to fill in and give us your feedback. And if you have not registered prior to this meeting, please put your email there so that we can have that for the sake of getting back to you in the future. Okay, some of us have been sitting for some time. Let's take, instead of 10, let's take 5 minutes break, and then we'll continue. Stretch your leg, water, and then we'll continue. Okay, this is the title of my presentation. But one thing is that I did not plan to answer this question and give you an answer to this question. In my mind, I was thinking of this as more rhetorical than coming to give you an answer. And in my mind, I was thinking that I will raise some pointers which we can engage in discussion, in going forward here today, or taking the discussion and conversation in going forward. So just to make that note, as you will see, and I was thinking of where to start this discussion. I don't know if you have read about Stephen Sassin's story about his digital camera development pathways. Well, for many inventors or innovators, or those who have discovered one thing or the other, it may not be different what they have gone through. But one thing that is always common is that there is always a small beginning or small beginnings. You can see him holding this digital camera. This was in the late 70s, 80s. This was how it looked like. And it was doing what he wanted it to do, not perfectly. But if you just fast forward to today, this is what we have. Some are much, much more smaller than this. In fact, our mobile phones, as you can see, can do great as many of these cameras. But the same concept of having a digital camera evolved into what we have today in our hands. If somebody out today carrying this, is frightening to see why you're using that. But when he made it, it wasn't so. But we have developed this concept to this point in time that we are confident to put a camera even in our pocket. Our phones that contain all that kinds of facilities have the camera integrated. Perhaps he didn't think about it in that way, that this will result to this. But one thing, when you look at his story, is he had curiosity. Curiosity led him to begin to evaluate many things. And from there, he started testing his ideas. He reports many failures, technical failures, communication failures, organizational failures, and so on and so forth. There were criticisms. Many of his friends complain about the time he spent into this thing. They don't see any future in it. Sometimes bringing it out, they saw that this is not going to work. Why do you spend your time doing this? But something took him through all this. Persistency. His failures, taking them, asking himself, what happened? What did I get wrong? What can I improve? And persistency led him to overcome some of these challenges. He didn't get perfect camera as we have here, but he got something that was at that time reliable and was welcomed. Everybody today, more or less, has access to a camera because most people have phones. But why did I start with this? I think this is a story that is personally relevant, organizationally relevant, nationally relevant, and continentally relevant. The key of persistency is very important if we want to take our continent from where it is today to the next level. Persistence is very important. Finally, it took him about 40 years or so to be recognized for what he did. And in 2009, he was awarded National Medal of Technology and Innovation. Yes, the road may be long, but if we persist and keep on going, we will change the narrative without giving up. Okay, so perhaps you can read more about that. It's quiz time. I want to give you some quiz for 5 minutes to look at what you think. I'm not gonna give you the answers to this question to tell you this is right or wrong, but not to challenge our mind. What do we think about these things? We are discussing about science. We're discussing about research. We're discussing about innovation. We're discussing about society. So I will give you this quiz. It will pop up on your screen, and 5 minutes time, I will close it. So the hour sharp. So I open it. Please send your answers. For those who are now, we are having a quiz, and you have about a minute to complete the quiz in front of you and submit. And then please take your time to introduce yourself on the chat panel of the Zoom, and include your email address, please.
Excuse me, Prof. Bright.
Yes,
Hello,
please.
Prof. Good evening, Prof. The submit button is not working.
Yeah,
I'm trying to submit, but it's not.
somebody mentioned that you need to complete all the question before you can submit. Okay, I shared the results with you. Did you get it to see what we have filled? Yeah, great, great. I see your answers. Quite interesting. Let's see what happens as we go through today. And I think you need to think about this. Why I brought this up is that many times we don't think about it in this way. And the fact is that there is always a journey. Societies go through a journey. Personally, we go through journeys. And many things that happen may lose their meanings in this journey. That may include definitions as well. That may include concepts, and so on and so forth. I think the same thing comes to play in the scientific arena. And so today, if you ask somebody who is a scientist, you get different answers. Why? Because in the process of that journey, so many things might have changed, so many concepts might have changed. And that comes into the discussion I have today. Who is an African scientist? It's very important. Perhaps by the time we finish the discussion, I told you I'm not going to give you an answer to that. It's a rhetorical question. Perhaps before we finish, you may actually discover that you are one of them or you are not one of them. Perhaps. Okay. What really does science do, or do we really need science for? What do we really need science for? This is UNESCO, which is a very nice presentation. I like to use in my talks. Very, very basic. What science does. First, they started to say that science is the greatest collective endeavor. And this is very important, collective endeavor. And what it does is that it ensures longer and healthier life, provides medicine to cure our diseases, provides water for our thirst, helps to grow our foods, provides energy for our consumption, makes life more fun. For instance, providing sports facilities, creating music, ICT, generates solutions for everyday life. This is quite basic and it's quite important conceptualization. Quite important conceptualization. And I think many times we have taken it out of this basic conceptualization, become more abstract in the way we see science. And you can see that in response to the questions. You can see it sometimes you hesitated to think, really, can I put this as a scientific work? A carpenter, for instance. But ultimately, science must respond to societal needs and global challenges. It must respond. Finally, science, technology, innovation must drive our pursuit of more equitable and sustainable development. We should note this. It must drive it. And we relate this to the continent Africa. One of the questions that come to mind is science driving our development? Is science driving our development? Because it must drive it. If it doesn't, then there's a problem there. Because science, we provide evidence that something works, how it works, or something does not work. And that evidence is needed because it saves you from several problems: resources expenditure, planning, and so on and so forth. Okay, I go on. So from that definition, it is clear that science is the bedrock for development of the society. In essence, no scientific research, no nation building. This is important because the way societies have developed, there has been lots of trial and error and experience gathering and improving on those and establishing that if you do this way, it gives you this answer. But if along the way we neglect this aspect, then we are making decisions haphazardly. And that will not be the best approach to do in developing a nation or growing the society. Gotts in 1997, I like this quote a lot. It says, scientific knowledge has thus become a decisive factor for economic growth. Hence, the socioeconomic development of regions or nation states depends increasingly on this resource. Research offers an opportunity for scientists of poorer nations to stand on their own feet without the need for international support to assess the scientific questions of their own nation and to contribute to the universal quest for knowledge. So in any nation where scientific research is poor, then you're in trouble because you are not producing knowledge, you are only consuming. And if you are consuming knowledge, then you're in big trouble, which means that as I will present in going forward, you neglect the resources around you. You neglect discovery of what nature offers. Science is the key which unlocks for humankind storehouses of nature. And we have to tap into that. And this is not anything new. It's not a new concept. It has been there. Our peers of yesterdays have realized this many years back, and that is why you can see Africa led the way in many facets of development, in technology, in medicine, in architecture, in mining, in astronomy, in trade. Africa was at the forefront. of all this. Africa was at the forefront. You can see all this that happened and the time passed. That is what Africa was known for. I wouldn't go into, I'm not a historian, but at least these are facts that are there, that are known. You can check out, they are there. But where are we today? Our story is Two Blood. Two Blood, a shadow of our past. The story of Africa today is Two Blood, a shadow of our past. That is the fact as we see it today. In which case, instead of producing, we are consuming. We keep consuming, we keep consuming. And if we keep consuming, then there is no expectation we should have that our society will develop in the right trajectory. We develop as others are developing. We develop according to our expectations of what? If we are only consuming, or if we are mainly consuming, there needs to be that aspect of discovery, innovation, generation of knowledge, generation of evidence. We need to do that. Otherwise, we are not consuming. And you can go to the point where, because of where we are, you can go to the point where you begin to hear things. Somebody gives birth in Africa, and then is importing baby food from US or UK, so on and so forth. That is a sorry state of any nation. It's a sorry state, and we need to think carefully about what situation we find ourselves in this. On my right, you can see UNESCO Institute of Statistics, what they have shown. And what they have here is the contribution of each nation, the contribution of the GDP, percentage of the GDP to research and development, as well as the number of researchers available in each nation. I bet you most of these are African nations. And this shows that no African country spends up to 1% of its GDP on scientific research. This is established fact. No African country. The highest is South Africa, which spends about 0.82%. On the list is Madagascar. And with regards to number of researchers in each country, Morocco is ranking highest, having a little above 1,000 per 1 million researchers. Nigeria, the giant of Africa, has only 38 researchers per 1 million inhabitants. 80% of global research spending is accounted by 10 countries. And what happens is that if these indicators are there, then it is really difficult to expect that there will be a miracle of development, because the driving force of development is not taken care of for whatever reasons we may have. And then we can look at the developmental milestones we have had. Global Index of Human Development, for instance, measured in 1870 and 2015 here, you can see that Africa resembled many other continents. But if you fast forward to, and of course, the darker the maps, the better they are. If you fast forward to 2015, you can see that Africa is looking quite much different from other nations. Not so much has changed this long period of time. Life expectancy in 2016 projected in 2099, Africa also looks worse, as you can see. Access to drinking water in 1990 and 2015, actually, in terms of the number, it has actually increased. Much more people who do not have access to drinking water in Africa. So here we are doing worse in 2015 than in 1999. Extreme poverty, to 2030, the number will increase compared to 1999. Share of the population using the internet, in 2000, Africa looked very close to many nations. In 2017, we are separated. Secure internet servers, Africa also in 2010 looked close to many nations, but in 2017, 7 years after, not big change from where we were. Other nations or other continents have moved. But the problem is this: the projection of where Africa will be. The projection of where Africa will be in 2100 is quite frightening if we take into account the previous statistics we have seen. See where Africa is today. See where Asia is. Africa is going to knock out Asia soon after 2100. That is a problem. Our population will increase so rapidly. So one of the questions that we always ask is, why are we where we are today? And of course, we can give different reasons why this is the situation: external interference, internal complacency, corruption, bad government, and the list goes on and on and on. But as I've shown before, the UN and some developmental experts all agree on one thing: that a nation where science is not taking hold, then we do not expect so much development, because that is a driving force. That is where the evidence is generated. That is what gives insight where it should be going. So the number of scientists in Africa, if you look at it across the nations, the number of scientists and the amount spent or put into research, scientific research, reflects in the level of development. That is clear. So what is happening? What is happening in Africa? Scientists, what is our contribution? How do we measure that? Is it obvious? What are we doing? Are we not doing enough? Don't we have sufficient tools to do our work? We can ask so many questions. But the point, and where I'm going here, in relation to the question I'm asking today, who is an African scientist, is recognizing the importance of our role, what we are required, what expectation, that for Africa to develop, then science need to be at the forefront. I mentioned earlier, our politicians have been in the forefront for way too long. But for scientists, if we recognize that, that is where actually development comes into play. What do we do here? Okay, we have an irony. At the same time, we can see that there is, and that irony we have is that the potential is in abundance. These figures may be debated, but there are published papers on this. The amount Africa is contributing, I mean, the amount of resources Africa has, the amount of resources Africa has is too much. Yeah. And if our land area, it's more than US, Europe, China combined together. Africa is bigger than this. So we have resources. There's no problem with that. But we need to find out what is the problem. I will just give you a blink of hope. Computer mic. So that you can see this. I saw it yesterday from another forum and I quite liked it.
In Europe, not only ongoing, it is true that Africa faces both social and economic difficulties, which we do not face here in the West. And these contribute to Africa's ongoing poverty. But I want to tell you today that Africa has the resources, the ability, and the people to grow into an economic superpower. It is the richest continent already in terms of natural resources. 30% of the world's cobalt, diamonds, gold, and iron are in Africa. Africa also has huge wealth in oil. Nigeria produces more than 2.5 million barrels of oil per day. On the global market, one barrel is worth around $52. You can do the maths, but you get the idea. Nigeria's oil is worth a lot. Africa already has a booming pharmaceutical industry, and huge progress is being made in fighting back against disease and infections in African countries. More and more African children are going back into school and are being provided with education and improving hygiene practices, which help with stopping the spread of disease. Africa is ideally located for global dominance in trade, with close trading connections to Europe, the Middle East, and Asia. The east coast of Africa has access to the Indian Ocean, which, with the ongoing rise of the Chinese and Indian economies, could become the new centre of global trade. And unlike many countries in the West, including Britain, Africa is not saddled with debt. The British debt is 87% of the British GDP, while the African debt is only 9% of their GDP. All but 2 countries in Africa could pay off their debt within 1 year. So the potential is already there, and the growth is already beginning. Even now, Africa is the continent in the world with the fastest economic growth. The GDP per capita of sub-Saharan Africa is expected to rise by 800% from 2020 to 2050. Anyone who doubts that Africa can make quick economic progress like this should look at the economic history of the US. In 1977, the US economy was the same size as the African economy is today. And since then, the American economy has grown by a massive $18.419 trillion. And with Africa having more natural resources than the US, its progress in the next 40 years could be even more spectacular. So if you're someone here today who thinks that Africa will never catch up with the rest of the world, I want to say that you will be proved wrong. With its mammoth population, massive potential, and amazing stores of resources, within your lifetime, Africa will become an economic superpower. Thank you. What's that motivation? Got that motivation, which is quite insightful. But it depends on us where we want to go from here, where we want to go. The potential is there. But it's not a straightforward question. It's really complicated. We may discuss issues of external interference, internal complacency, corruption, the list as we highlighted earlier. But as scientists, we have to know that also the ball is in our court. So there is need for radical innovation.
discovery, research that focuses on Africa. Because societal development of Africa depends on our scientific endeavors. The evidence to develop should be based on research. If you go around African legislation, House of Parliament, and so on, you see our legislators, many come with bills because there is pressure for them to nominate bills to be passed. Some borrow bills from different places in the world and bring it. There's no clear indication that such path has evidence that it can work in our society. But what brings evidence? Research and science. So there is a big burden that rests on the shoulders of African scientists. And in going forward, to make any tangible change for where we are, to move from where we are to where we want to go, we need to take the bull by the horn. And that is seriously speaking of that. Okay, so I think Africa has had lots of revolutions, clearly. Our independence, political, from military to democracy, other aspects of social revolution that Africa has gone through. So we know many revolutions, but there's one revolution that has not happened. And I think that is scientific revolution. We established it with our peers in the yesteryears, as I explained, but that is gone. That story is gone, not a story of today. And to move forward, we need to have such revolution. Revolution is a word that has many meanings, and sometimes it's frightening. People don't want to use it. But in my mind, what I'm talking about here is a change, a radical change from the path we are taking to a path where we can be confident that we are doing things right. And this is situated within the context of science, African science, moving from knowledge consumption to knowledge production. We need to pursue innovation. We need to pursue discovery. And doing this, it takes a lot from us, it can be painful, but we must work on that. That is a burden an African scientist has. Wherever you find yourself, in the IT, engineering, social sciences, medicine, health, culture, the same burden rests on us. Africa's development rarely will happen from outside. It must be driven by Africans for it to work. That is the burden we have. And what I am saying here is not something new. Many nations have gone through this. We travel to spend our holidays in different places because of the way they are. They have gone through it. Singapore, China is doing it, India is doing it, and so on and so forth. If they have done it, there's a possibility, given the resources Africa has, given the potential, there's a possibility that we can get there. But we need to be ready. Greg Mills he says that poverty is now optional. And that also includes stagnation. It also includes progress. It's optional. From the personal level to the national level, I think. So in terms of science, I think that there is need for science contextualization. And what I mean is that we should think global in our endeavors, but we should act local. Our scientific discoveries must have relevance for Africa's problem. If our scientific discoveries are aimed to compete with the world outside Africa without having any relevance in solving Africa's problem, in dealing with poverty, in providing electricity, in giving us clean water, in helping us to live life to optimum level, then it doesn't help. And in terms of contextualization, the issue of COVID has shown us, given us some indication. The world has engaged in politics of COVID. At the same time, the vaccine development, perhaps this is very controversial. Some people don't want vaccine and all that. But just to say that the development we have seen here has become a contextual issue. Russia is making its own, US is making its own, UK, China, everyone is making their own. But what is in for us, Africa? We are waiting to be sent. And if you look at this BBC News here, said Africa's long wait, it may take time. And the World Health Organization secretary or president has released a statement to say that he's worried how this is going, the politics that is involved in this. And that gives us an indication that there is need for science contextualization. There is need for us to look inward and develop what we have. We have not thought about this so much carefully, and I think it leaves a lot to be said. So there's need for science contextualization for us to move in the trajectory that is going to drive development for. Well, yes, science is always a product of the environment, as it is with every other thing. There is need for contextual support, the right policy. The government needs to provide support. The private sector needs to provide support. The society at large needs to provide support. And scientists need to have the right equipment to do their work. Otherwise, we'll continue to chase shadows. The right innovations, discoveries will not happen. So if the context does not provide such support, it is near impossible. And that is why, if you look at the figure I showed you from the UNESCO, the number of researchers in Africa, if we continue in that way, not much will happen. Not much will happen. So this contextual support needs to be there. Opportunities for continuous capacity building of scientists to increase their skills. And that is one of the things we have taken up in the frontiers. The need to develop science leaders. Science leaders. Often we have managers, but too little leaders. I will leave that for my big brother Daniel and Ike, who will deal with these issues. That is their area of expertise. But we need leaders, visionaries, strategists, those who see what we don't see, those who see where we can go. That needs to be inculcated into science. We need to minimize competition and increase collaboration across board. We have started it in the training I have. It's so enjoyable that brothers and sisters across Africa can generate such kind of environment to collaborate, identify common interests, and do it joyfully. Funding, we'll talk about funding in one of the seminar series, but that is one item scientists need to do well. It needs to be provided, without which it's difficult. We have many disruptive education systems across Africa, and that will negatively impact on scientific progress. Instability in society is also a challenge. So the point here is the African scientist needs to take the bull by the horn, but the environment needs to be provided for an African scientist to perform efficiently in order to drive Africa's development. Okay, I'm coming to this short talk. As I said from beginning, it is important to set the agenda of where we are going with this seminar series. And today, highlighting some aspect that we need to begin to think about to continue to bring the discussions as we go on through this year. And perhaps at the end, we can formulate agenda of what we need to do, where we need to go. So just to say that our challenges are monumental. Most of the regions that we started with are going ahead while we are following. We need to find our voice and move forward. There's no other time. The projections that are there for us in terms of population we have can be quite frightening if we consider the state we are today. And so there is time now for us to put ourselves together and move on. But my talk today and what we will be looking at throughout this seminar series is the role of the scientists, African scientists, to realize that we are custodian of our developmental success. We hold the key. Yes, many things that will hinder us, but except we come out, except we make our voices known, we may not be taken too seriously. So we need to come out. Our society has not appreciated that aspect, that the scientists are drivers and they need to be supported to help the society grow. So for too long, we have remained in the background. We rely on mostly external solutions. Many of them perhaps do not work in our context. We need to look inward. This is a wake-up call for us. And there's every indication of how the global situation looks like. And the COVID situation is already giving us more indication. As scientists, we need to wake up. I mentioned revolution, conscientiousness of African scientists to realize the need for radical input to what we have as developmental agenda. We need to prioritize and fund research that show evidence for developmental success of the society. And I think that this includes starting from the PhD. What PhDs, a PhD project, do our students have? Many times it ends up abstract. We need to fund projects that have immediate impact for development. This should be a multi-sector developmental focus research agenda. And to strengthen science leadership. I mentioned that we have mostly had managers and we need to have leaders. If you go across many African research institutions, Where there is a core leader, you will see that there is always strategy and pathway where to go. This needs to be distributed across board to ensure that our leaders in the science field have the requisite training to lead properly. African scientists also need something in return as they prepare themselves, the right environment, the right infrastructure, continuous skills development and capacity. We need adequate funding and support from government. And if all these are provided, as African scientists, we have ourselves to blame if we do not get it right. We have abundant resources to tap into, and we have population that we require to make a statement in the world. Okay, that is where I end. Our time is fast spent because I know you may have points to raise. So please, if you don't mind, we can use the remaining 20 minutes to engage in discussions and talk about some of these things, if that works for you. So we can skip the break and finish at once. So please feel free. You can unmute yourself if you want to say something.
Thank you, Mr. Bright.
Thank you.
Thank you for the videos and all the inspiring things. Your classes are always motivating. My name is Dr. Adebayo from Bedrock University, and I actually just finished my PhD program, and my thesis was policy related project. So I actually come up with policy brief, but my question is, or my concern is, there is no enough enabling environment to actually make sure that those things are put in place, partly from the state government or from the federal government. So I would like to ask if there is anything we can do about maybe pushing, trying to ensure that such policy-related projects are implemented probably from the state House of Assembly or from the federal government. So that's just what I have to say today. Thank you so much for your efforts so far, and God bless.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello?
No.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Prof.
Yes, go.
Yes, please. Carl, King Carl.
Okay, the lady can go ahead, please. Yes.
Go ahead, King.
Yes, okay. Yeah, I wanted to speak with regards to my colleagues' statements. Well, with regards to the policy brief I work in the policy space as well. I work with Imani Africa. What he can do is to maybe partner with some of the local think tanks or CSOs to inculcate some of his findings and his briefs into some of the various policy engagements with the federal leaders and the national leaders, and that can help him in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello.
Yes, Eman, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Thanks, Bright, for elaborating these important points. I think the most important message we can take here from your presentation is that it is important to do this now and not waiting for the environment to be improved, because the environment for science and research will be improved by the action of African scientists and not will be improved from itself or by the action of governments. And so thank you for this.
Thank you. Please, more discussion.
Yes, thank you very much. This is Johnston. Thank you, Dr. Bright, for good presentation. On the issue of unlocking resources, I think this is really one of the big challenges that African researchers and scientists face. I would like to, implore the rest of the colleagues and others in Africa that as much as you want to get to take charge of our own solutions, it's also important to partner with the other continents or maybe other countries which have resources. So that is, I think, one of the things that I may want to add with what you've said. So partnership is key. And the other thing, it sounds a bit, I don't know, obvious, but I think it's a political. Maybe it's time that we also have African scientists also take charge of these political positions so that they can be able to influence or take lead when it comes to even allocating resources for research or for all these things we've been talking about this evening. So I don't know what's your take on that, but beyond the policy formulation processes, scientists should also go to these parliaments, should also take these political seats and be able to ensure that we have adequate resources for African scientists. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnston. The issue of politics is not, it's complicated. It's complicated. Of course, this varies from nation to nation. But in general, African politics is complicated. It's a murky water. Of course, you can't have a rule that scientists should not go into politics. There are many scientists who are in politics across African nations. But the question would be the influence they have had, really. Of course, we expect that if they are there, they can help to contribute, but it's not so easy, really. It is difficult to make a prescription of what they should do. But one thing I know is that African science can also make its voice known, not just by joining politics, but by coming out to make the people understand that they have a high stake in driving the developmental agenda of the continent. And I think this can happen in this way. The issue of funding, if you see the African Development Bank, when the the president was sworn in the second term last year, they have agenda, they have publicized what they are going to do in the next 5 years. One of the questions is, what is the evidence that those items will work? Are there scientific evidence? And in this aspect, I think the scientists can play a role in liaising. African science can have a body, policy body, that liaises with these institutions to discuss what do you need, what is the evidence, how do you derive the evidence. And this institution can fund African science. In every development they have to deal with, to generate the evidence and the monitoring mechanisms to ensure that such agenda are carried to fulfillment. Otherwise, if you are waiting to go into the politics, it's not an easy process for. I mean, my own personal opinion on this is that becomes too much of a distraction for you in doing this. I don't know, but that is what I think. It's not so easy place to be.
Professor Charles wants to say something.
Yes, please.
Can I?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, Professor Charles Nwaru is an emeritus professor at the University of Paris, and it's quite interesting to listen to all of us here. I've been on this research field for almost say 34 years ago when I obtained my PhD. And the only thing I wanted to chip in is we have very many African scientists lying down there. They want to operate. They want to realize the Africa we want. But the environment is the hitch. The environment in which we are supposed to operate. Many say so. And not all policies are bad in Africa. Like in my own country, Nigeria, not all policies are bad, but the operators. The governance is, most governance, will you say, in Africa, decent. Yeah, that's the problem. There was an interesting thing Professor Nwaru mentioned during his expose, that the speed at which the US finds itself today, we can equally do better, but you have to be conscious. I think Africa, the African scientist needs to be remotivated once again, and remotivated. And if there is something, do you think there is, our environment can improve, and people can, first of all, a kind of re-indoctrination without saying it so. Africa, most of those who lead us or who create the environment we are supposed to operate worship more or less money. And most of our young people, someone was saying, you have engineers who are sitting in air-conditioned offices, After all, they want to put food on the table for their respective families. What would they do in this type of environment? And when they bring in even new ideas, the way they are suppressed immediately. So they give up and sit in those air-conditioned offices. These are immense problems that we really need to abort. So I think that is it. We should change our kind of consciousness, awareness. We should change, if there is a way for people, the environment to change from money to thinking that we can improve our Africa. Is there any possibility that that it can be possible? That's only what I wanted to chip in. Not people are very much. If you look at the things you exposed, we can even there's most of our scientists lying down there. They could do a lot of things on the ground, but the environment they need to operate. That is the thing. That is all I wanted to say. And these scientists needs to be remotivated again. How can they be remotivated? Because there's a kind of frustrations out there. So that's the problem.
Thank you very much, Prof. Thank you very much, Prof. I think your point is well noted. And I think this forum can be, as I said earlier, a beginning for engaging in these discussions. I have taken it from my own to provide the trainings I provide. And my motivation is to ensure that people get involved in this discussion. Young as African scientists get involved in this discussion. And as you are saying, it's really very important to really motivate people. Bringing this discussion to the trainings, I see that there's great motivation among young Africans. But we need to keep the tempo going. Many things have gone wrong, and we can't change all of them at the same time. We need to begin from where we can. And having such discussion as we're having this evening, and as we'll be having this year, could be a drop of water in the ocean, but it may have also ripple effect. So I wouldn't lose any hope and become hopeless. Yes, a lot of things have gone wrong, but we can start from this. And I think these efforts are important as we keep the tempo going. Otherwise, we have self-fulfilling prophecy, how things are going to collapse. And let's continue to brighten the corner where we are and contribute our quota. It can be challenging. Okay, perhaps, yeah, Uchewaji, yeah, please go ahead.
All right. Good evening, Prof. Thank you, and good evening, everyone on the platform. It's been a wonderful presentation, and I think that the purpose of this presentation is to spur African scholars into action. And just as Professor Nwosu said about remotivation, I think it's key. I do not know how it will be possible to involve especially vice chancellors of African universities into programs like this, and charge them with the responsibility to in their budget make out enough funds for young scholars. And I think that could be a way of remotivating young scholars in Africa. And again, if there could be a way of sourcing funds outside as well, and to make sure that the young scholars are, remotivated, I think we can actually cause a revolution in the science world here. So it just a little suggestion I want to make.
Thank you, my brother.
Yeah.
That is very important, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you say this is to spur our motivation. The next speaker for this in 3 weeks' time will be Vice Chancellor from one of the Nigerian universities. I can actually show the this here. Of course, you can't get everybody on board at the same day, the same time. This is a stepwise thing to move on gradually. And that is how it starts. Whatever revolution has started did not start everywhere at the same time. It started gradually. And so, with what we get from here, discussions we engage in here, I think we have prospect to go in the right direction. There are those who are not in the boat now. We are few in the boat, but eventually we'll get many on our way. And as scholars, as scientists, once we have that voice, to get to a point where we will be listened to. And let's take it from there. Our time is up for today, and we promise to keep you until time. We have 1 minute past, sorry about that. But want to keep to our word. Thank you everyone for coming today. We meet again on the 14th of February, the same time. Sorry for many people who couldn't join because of the technical issues, but we'll try to sort that out and make sure that everyone has opportunity to join these talks. We had 330 people who registered, and that was quite amazing. We'll see you again in 3 weeks' time. Have a good evening, and thank you again for coming. I can stop sharing. And you want to share, please? Yes. Yes, please, Eman.
Please, for everyone, feel free to spread the invitation for the next sessions in your university, in your field. The invitation is open for everyone, and everyone is welcome to participate in discussions. If you have any suggestions, you are welcome. For the university policymakers and stakeholders, you can also spread the word and pass the invitation to them. You welcome everyone.
Thank you, and have a good night, everyone.